Hello, and welcome to the Unleashed podcast. On the show, we meet with purpose-driven leaders and professionals who are making their impact. We share success stories and habits, always with the goal of inspiring others. My name is Amy Miller, and today we are meeting with the warm and wonderful, that's how I describe you, yet not to be underestimated, which we'll talk about, Leslie Carter. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Leslie has over 20 years experience in healthcare sales with 6 years experience now leading teams, and understand that you have found your passion for the in the rare disease genetic testing space, and that's where you're focusing now.
Absolutely. It is my passion project.
You shared that you are often underestimated and you always prove them wrong. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think my demeanor, maybe growing up in the South, I try to be very authentic, and I like to think I'm a kind person. And I think sometimes I don't come across as really forceful or aggressive, which a lot of times is what sales leaders tend to look for in salespeople, is they want someone who they know is going to go out there and get it done. And I don't always present in that classic way. So I had a very specific job when I was actually moving into diagnostics for the first time. I had been in the pharmaceutical world, and I was interviewing with a sales leader, and I knew several people at this company, and they all knew my work ethic, knew what I was capable of. And they were like, "You need to interview Leslie." So I interviewed for the role and ultimately got the role, but it was very close and tight. And I remember that sales leader telling me he almost didn't hire me because he thought I was too nice. And it was the push of a lot of my former colleagues that were like, "She can get it done. She can get it done." And so he took a chance because of that referral. And I did get it done. I took a $400,000 a month territory to a $3 million a month territory. And that has always just been in the back of my mind of people just, it really drives me. It's like when people say you can't do something, it's like, oh no, I'm going to prove you wrong. Now I'm vested, right? Now I'm going to go for it. And so I've always tried to use that underestimation as a fuel for myself to really prove people wrong.
I love that, because so much of the time, we can underestimate ourselves, so we can have that going against us just as a natural human tendency anytime we're trying something new. But then, of course, we can have that feeling from others, that being underestimated by others. And you took that negative and turned it into a positive, you said, as a fuel to drive you. I'm curious if this story or these words, if you've heard them before in other areas of your life or just professional, or if you've heard them and dealt with that in your personal life, and maybe if this is something that you mentioned an example from your sales leadership career. So I'm curious if this is something that's kind of been following you in other areas of your life, and maybe something that you heard a long time ago.
It is very astute of you to pick up on that. When I was young, I can remember a couple of my elementary school teachers worrying that other students would take advantage of me because I was always very nice. And I had one teacher, I think it was my third grade teacher, who actually could sort of see past that, and she knew that I was going to be just fine. And I'm often reminded by my mother, I don't actually remember this story, but when I was really young, I have an older brother, and he would have his toys all over the place. And when it came time to clean them up, he would always give me his toys so that I would clean them up for him.
Oh my goodness.
And he had done this with some crowns. And I had a family member, I was in my grandma's basement or something. And, here he was like, "Oh, you can't play with my toys until it's time to put them away. And now I'm going to give them to you." And he looked over at me, and I was sitting there with those crayons, and I was breaking them in half, one by one. And he looked over at my mother and he said, "She's going to be okay." So it's I'm always going to be kind. I'm always going to try to present as a kind person, but I'm not going to let somebody walk all over me either. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to report my brother and I are the best of friends. So,
That's so great. Yeah, I was just you said good of me to or astute of me to pick up on that, and it wasn't necessarily that. I can't take credit for that. I was just curious because I see this in myself and also in others in conversations that I have and in psychology too. It's often an experience from when we're younger and the decision that we make. I think of it as these little defining moments that we have throughout our lives that can shape our future. I remember when I was in sixth grade, I had just graduated from fifth grade, and I was now in this big, huge middle school. To me, it felt really huge, and I was always small for my age. And I remember a pivotal defining moment, even way back then, when a bully tried to bully me. And I remember all these thoughts going through my head, thinking just in a split second, thinking, realizing the importance of this situation and what my next step was going to be. And it was I going to stand up to her or was I going to bow down? And I knew that whatever I chose was going to define who I was moving forward. So I stood up to her and I didn't get picked on. But yeah, you did the
oh,
same
good for
thing.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I love that memory. I'm still proud of it. But
absolutely. You should be.
yeah. As a leader, I'm curious if you sometimes see traits in your team where qualities that, such as, like, for example, you're super nice and that's a strength, and maybe sometimes it holds you back. Often it propels you forward. Do you find this sort of double-edged qualities in your team sometimes where uh, qualities can hold them back and or propel them forward, and do you find ways to help coach up your team?
I mean, absolutely. I think almost every quality or characteristic that a person has can be used for really good things and can also tend to be a weakness sometimes and hold us
Hmm.
back. So it's like harnessing those things and really helping to identify what those traits are and make sure that people are aware of them. So just to give you a couple of examples, I've coached teammates before who are incredibly smart, have so many ideas, but also like get so excited and passionate about those ideas that sometimes they steamroll over other teammates. And
Hmm.
so you have to kind of make them self-aware of like you are bringing a lot of great stuff to the table, but if people don't like you, then they're probably not going to listen to you. So maybe you need to pull it back a little bit, have a little bit more engaging time with someone. Conversely, I've coached teammates who are so detail oriented, so analytical, so
Hmm.
thoughtful in everything that they do, but they don't vocalize enough. And so a lot of their talents are overlooked, or they could be sharing with their teammates and helping their teammates get better and be leaders themselves, but
Hmm.
they have to speak up a little bit more and recognize that their teammates do care what they're saying and what they're doing, because in my experience, a lot of salespeople, that's an area where sometimes we tend to gloss over on those really detail specific analytic type tools. So if
Hmm.
you can help maximize that and give them a voice for what their strengths are, the best teams are not 10 of the exact same personality type.
Hmm.
So we have to pull out those traits that are different in each of us and how they can all work together to make a team really, really successful.
I'm so glad that you shared that example. I'm glad that I asked you that question. That's such a strong, you just demonstrated a super strong leadership quality of a few, I think. One, giving real-time feedback. Feedback is so important. And I think that's a strength of an asset of a strong leader, because if you maybe wait till the end of the year or the quarterly review and versus giving that real-time feedback where they can actually take the information and adjust right then, and also you're leading with the positive while not shying away from their areas of development. So I love that you are doing that, and I'm sure that your team really appreciates that and is growing and having positive results from that coaching. And then also I often or I also think of a strong team as a team that can better leverage their strengths and weaknesses or areas of development and awareness. Like you said, if you are aware of where your strengths are and what you're not good at, if you're not aware of the areas that you need to develop, you're not going to develop them. So, you need a good leader to help coach, bring out that awareness and draw attention to the areas that you want to develop. But also you can leverage your resources across your team. And that not only makes the whole team feel empowered, they're contributing what they are strong in, and then they're also leveraging the strengths of other team members too.
Yes, 100%. I think creating those individualized developmental plans are so huge. They're good for the leader, but they're also so important for the reps in these situations. Not everybody needs to be a 10 out of 10 on every skill, right? Like sometimes I just need to get you to a 3 or 4 so that you can meet the minimum because you really shine in something else. But I love the idea too of partnering up teammates. We did that a lot in my last role, of like finding those people who have such a great understanding of their territory analysis versus others who are all about relationship building and are incredibly charismatic. And can you cross-pollinate those skills so that they can sort of see that, oh, there's a different way of doing this. Like my way isn't the only way. And they can sort of pick and choose different things from other teammate styles and sort of incorporate them into their own.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And there's something in organizational psychology, you may have heard of it. It's called transactive memory systems. This is one of the things that I learned that really stands out for me. And it's cool because I thought about this before going into the program. And then I learned, oh, there's actually a name for this. But I think a great team building activity, because a lot of times leaders can take their teams out for a fun activity or dinner or something like that, which can be great. But research talks about how these teamwork, team motivational type activities and exercises can work better when they're centered around the actual work. So I think it would be cool to have a day or a team plan of action meeting where each team member gets up and talks about what they're good at for a few minutes. So then everybody comes away feeling valued and they know how to leverage their resources better. And, oh, this is, if I'm having challenges keeping my pipeline filled, that's one that I struggle with when I was in sales and even now, so-and-so is good at this, I can reach out to them. So if I were to go back into a sales rep role where I had a sales team, I would absolutely work to leverage my resources better.
I really love that idea. I'm going to steal that.
Yay!
Especially since we're putting together a brand new team. It's like, it's perfect timing to just
that's so
how you
exciting.
get
Awesome.
to know everybody. Yeah. Like what's your superpower at work?
Yeah. And then as you get to know your team and you see what their strengths are, you could, do it again and say, hey, I recognize you're super solid at this. This is what I want you to talk about on the next team call or whatever. But yeah, if you try it, let me know how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to hear about how you would describe your leadership style. There's all different kinds of leadership styles, and there's different aspects, I think, of different leadership styles that can maybe serve better across different teams or maybe at different times, just depending on what's happening. I'm curious about your leadership style, how you would describe it, and then also how you feel like your leadership style best serves you and maybe how it sometimes holds you back.
Another great
If you're
question.
Open to sharing that one, that last part is maybe a little personal.
No, totally.
Okay.
Actually, that's part of my style. I think I try to be incredibly transparent. My last boss was very transparent. I actually love that about her. I found that to be really empowering because, when you sort of open up the curtains and say, guess what, guys, I don't always have the answers. Here's what I know. Here's what, we're working towards.
Yeah.
And when you can share those kinds of details with your team, I think they respect you a lot more. It's not just about, we have to do it this way. Rather, it's, we have to do this because of X, Y, and Z. And this is what we're trying to accomplish with it. So I think once they have that understanding of, oh, this is why I need you to type in all these details of call notes and like log these specific things. It's because there's actually a reason for it. Or this is why I need to get my expense report in by the 9th of the month, because there's all these other functions that need to happen for forecasting and budgeting on the other end of it. And you're holding up the line when you do that. So transparency is huge for me. And then I think overall, I would consider myself to be a servant leader. That's at least what I aspire to be. I am I would say I'm an extroverted introvert.
Okay.
So I can be very social and can enjoy those interactions, but it drains my battery. And And I don't enjoy being like the center of attention. That's not where I shine. Like I really enjoy shining the spotlight on my team members.
Hmm.
So the servant leadership style, I think, really suits that well. Of like, I'm here to help you. My job as your leader is to remove obstacles so that you can be successful.
Hmm.
There's not that. I try for there not to be that power dynamic there. It's like, no, I actually work for you.
Hmm. I love that, both of those qualities that you shared, one being open and transparent. Oh, and also going back to being transparent, the I love that you share with your team the why, because I think that that motivates us. If we don't understand one, the deliverable, we need clearly defined deliverables that we understand so that we feel like we can achieve them. But also, if we don't understand the importance behind it, then we feel like it can feel like busy work. We can feel like we're wasting our time. But as adults, I think sometimes we get away from those positive habits that kids just naturally have. So we instinctively have these needs and thoughts and qualities, and one is to understand why. So I think that that's great, and we can feel, yeah, that can be much more motivating if we understand why. And then I think being a servant leader in the way that you described it likely opens your team for more collaboration, not just top down, but more just across the board. Where also, if you're open that you don't have maybe the answer necessarily, people might be more inclined to speak up, and rather than having the answers themselves and not feeling like, not that they're not feeling like they're not valued, but we may not always feel like for whatever reason that what we have to say is important. But I think the way that you lead sounds like you likely bring that out in your team, and they're probably more open to share ideas and collaborate. Do you find that?
I think so. I mean, I'm in a rapidly progressing industry. So, one week can be totally different than the week before.
Hmm.
And, I'm managing teams across sometimes more than one country. So different things work in different regions. And
Hmm.
I love the idea of somebody, on the East Coast of Florida trying something that may not work in the Midwest, but also it might, because maybe it hasn't been tried there before.
Hmm.
So I think as our business continues to evolve really, really quickly, having new ideas, fresh ideas is so important. And you have to create an environment for your team to talk about those things. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth.
Hmm.
I on weekly calls, I've had a longstanding tradition of tell me something good, right? Like that's how we end our calls. Like I
Hmm.
want to know something good that happened in your week this week. Like it doesn't have to be this huge win. Sometimes it's the like small things that sort of get you through the day. And that's
Hmm.
really what sales is all about, right? Like you're building small win on top of small win until
Hmm.
eventually it turns into something really big.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying the conversation as much as I am. Just a quick note, I work with leaders helping them make lasting hires with less stress, including customizable hiring workshops, executive search, or stepping in as a fractional talent partner, including interview process design, hybrid recruiting, and coaching support throughout. You'll find links below if you'd like to learn more. And now let's get back to our show. Absolutely. Yeah. And that makes me think of when you say tell me something good, that can also be a great reframer. If you're, because in sales it can be tough. We can have a loss, we can think that we made a mistake, and I say put it that way because as long as we're getting a takeaway and learning from that, what I would call not a failure or a mistake but an undesired outcome. So if you can
Yeah.
find some kind of good in something that maybe didn't work out that well, then that's going to reframe how you're thinking, and we want to be feeling good so that we're vibrating that in that positive energy, because that's what we're going to attract more of. So I think that's great. I want to ask you about your drivers. We were talking about understanding the why and being transparent to help motivate your team. I think that sometimes when sales professionals or professionals are just as people, when we don't feel motivated in our jobs, I don't think that it's necessarily that the person is an unmotivated person, to describe them. I think that it is more likely that they are not doing what they love, or maybe we can find what motivates them within their current role or an additional responsibility within the company, something that stimulates what I call their drivers. And I think bringing awareness to what drives you and enacting that driver, doing an activity that stimulates it, daily, if you can, or weekly. It helps people to stay motivated. So curious what drives you and what you do to stimulate those drivers.
Yeah, so I've been really, really lucky in my career that I have worked at many like mission driven organizations. And for me as an individual, mission driven work is really important. I have found that that's what fuels me. That's ultimately what really pushed me into the diagnostic side of things, is
Hmm.
because I felt like I was able to add more value there. So the mission piece is important. But even if you're not like directly tied to the mission of the company that you're working for, I always think it's so important to have your why. Like,
Hmm.
why am I doing this? I work in the rare disease space. So, lots of people talk about, I'm in genetic testing for rare disease because I have a family member with X, Y, or Z condition. And that's
Hmm.
great because you're directly tied to the company mission. But
Yeah.
sometimes your mission is, I've got two little kids at home and I want to make sure that they have the best life possible. And so
Hmm.
every day I get up and do what I need to do because I want to make their lives better. Or, we're saving for this trip or, college fund, whatever it might be. I think if you can tie your work to your own why and your own mission,
Hmm.
sometimes that helps you kind of get through those days that are maybe a little bit less fun or a little bit less exciting, but you kind of keep the eye on the prize of like, this is why I get up and do what I do every day, for
Hmm.
my own personal why.
Yeah. Do you talk about that with your team, as I'm curious, as a group, or more one on one, or what are some things that you do to draw out the why for your team members?
So historically, I've done it both ways. I've been at companies where it's like, that's part of your training is you spend a good couple hours, like everyone writing out their why, making big posters, displaying them, like
Oh,
really
awesome.
feeling tied to that. And then other
Yeah.
times it's a more like personal conversation. So you're doing a one-on-one with your rep and you get to know them as people and like,
Hmm.
okay, what is the motivator here? Because we are all motivated by different things. Some people are strictly like money motivated. A lot are motivated more by like words of affirmation. Other
Hmm.
people, like I said, are directly tied to the mission of the company and how it makes them feel as a person to like be a part of that. So I think you can do it both ways. I love the idea of, and it's giving me more ideas in this new role I'm in too, of like doing it all in the beginning in a big group and like
Uh-huh.
everybody talking about it. Cause I think when you see other people's whys, it also helps, as a teammate, like you can maybe like collaborate better with your teammate when you understand what motivates them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great idea and very true, because I think just human nature, we want connection. And of course, naturally, we're not going to be connected with everyone. But in order to have connection, you have to have understanding. So, yeah, if your team understands what drives one another, that can help them just get to know each other better, understand each other better, have greater respect for one another, and just feel closer. And then that's likely going to drive your goal to succeed, not just individually, but also as a team. Yay, you're
Mm-hmm.
getting, yeah, lots of great ideas. So as a leader, you have experience, of course, building teams and scaling teams. And with that, I'm sure has come lots of great hires and maybe one or two bad hires. Are you open to sharing an experience of a time that you made a bad hire and sharing a little bit about that?
Oh, Amy, I have so many stories. Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is like know that no matter how careful you are in the hiring process, there's gonna be some people that don't work out, and it's not. I don't think it's really even anybody's fault.
Hmm.
Um, I've hired a candidate who had a glowing resume, all the right experience, a referral from a former colleague that I trusted, and they didn't work out.
Hmm.
So I think the biggest thing and what I've tried to learn throughout my career, this is where like the real time feedback comes in and like making sure you're constantly communicating and having good documentation, is that it's going to happen. And you're best sometimes to cut it quickly instead of
Hmm.
letting it fester over months and years. Just saying, this isn't the right fit. Because I know too, when I'm interviewing, it's not even just is this person a right fit for our company, but it's are we a right fit for them? So I think we have to be transparent and honest in those conversations too, about like what our expectations are
Hmm.
and what the actual culture of the team is.
Yeah.
And I think if we're upfront about that, we can kind of make it a little bit less likely that we're going to run into some of those issues, but they
Hmm.
do happen from time to time.
Yeah.
And then, also not flying off the handle either of like, okay, well, this isn't exactly what I thought I was getting, but can I coach to it? Right. And that's where that real time feedback comes in. I think being
Hmm.
honest and direct with someone, like, here are the attributes that I think you're bringing to the table, but here's how I
Hmm.
think you could maximize it. Um, can kind of create some good dialogue to maybe move them forward and coach them up. But
Hmm.
if it's not working, I just think it's okay to say, we don't have to like belabor this. We can cut them loose and move on to the next and wish them well, because chances
Hmm.
are if we're feeling it, they're feeling it too.
Absolutely, 100%. I think that the same is true, and I think that's why it's so important to a couple of things that you spoke to, I think are really key in the interview process. Speaking as clearly and closely as possible to the company culture and the role so that the candidate has a clear understanding of what they are moving into, or they can learn, oh, you know what, this is actually not for me. And then also learning their why, I think, in the interview process is important too. Maybe they are a great fit, maybe they have the background experience, maybe they're even a great fit with the culture. But if what they're looking for long term is not there, then it might hurt to lose that candidate in the interview process. But then, you can move your focus back to continuing your search and ultimately find a candidate that's going to stay for a long time. Because, yeah, like you said, if the company's feeling like it's not a fit, the candidate is going to feel the same way, or the rep. I worked with a career coaching client who kept trying to get promoted, and she was doing a great job. She really should have gotten promoted, but I think it wasn't a cultural fit. And once she was honest with herself, she realized, you know what, this doesn't actually feel good, to me. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think you are spot on there. If it's not a feeling like a fit, with the company, then it's probably not feeling like the candidate. So you're better serving them, giving that feedback, and trying to coach them up at having that open feedback and communication so that they can assess if it's a fit for them also.
Yeah, I mean, we can all fake it in an interview, right? Like,
Yeah.
we can put on the show, but I think that's so important, of like finding a place that allows you to be your authentic self, because if you're able to do that, you're probably going to knock it out of the park in that job anyway, but you're also
Uh-huh.
just going to enjoy it so much more.
Yeah. And when you're not in the place for you, you're you're going to end up bringing down the team. I've left organizations. I leave when I'm not happy. Now I work for myself and I've been happy. And I've been
Best
happy
boss
in,
ever.
yeah, yeah. Not to say I couldn't use some help, but I've worked in organizations where I'm super happy, and then I get to a point where I'm not, and I am very self-aware, so I realize quickly, okay, I need to make a change. And in some cases, they've tried to get me to stay, and I'm thinking, why do you want me to stay? Because I'm going to end up bringing down the team. I don't want to bring anybody down. I want to bring people up. But if I'm not happy, then it's naturally going to impact the people around me. So,
Yeah, and I imagine, like, just in the short amount of time we've gotten to know each other, like, you probably are longing for that growth, right? And sometimes we outgrow where we are, and
yeah.
that's where the unhappiness comes in. You need a new challenge, you need something fresh. And
Hmm.
I think that's okay. I mean, I know my parents' generation, that's like a huge no-no. You started the company and you worked there your whole career, but
Hmm.
I've jumped around a lot, and every place I've been, you pick up new skills, and that's to me what keeps things like really exciting.
Hmm. Yeah, important to know yourself, and yeah, self-awareness is key, and just making sure you continue to go in the direction that's right for you. I want
Mm-hmm.
to, speaking of awareness and knowing yourself, you have shared that you love puzzles, and I just am curious about this. I think it's cool, literally and figuratively, and I'm sure that helps you in your role and in leadership. But I'd just love to hear a little bit more about your love for puzzles and where it shows up in a little in your personal and professional life.
I'm a puzzle nerd. I know, and you're one of the few people that says it's cool. So I love it. No, I've always loved puzzles. I think it's because when I was a kid,
Uh-huh.
especially at Christmas time, we'd sit around after all the holidays were kind of over. The dining room table was no longer needed. for family gatherings. That's where we would always work our puzzles. And like,
Fun.
mom and dad would let you stay up late, because you didn't
Yeah.
have school. And so I think I've got that nostalgic tie there, which is why I've always kind of been
Okay.
drawn to the puzzles.
Uh-huh.
But I love bringing order to chaos.
Okay.
I think that's also why I enjoy gardening and,
Oh.
sort of seeing what the big picture is going to look like and then trying to attack things. I people assemble puzzles in very different ways. My in-laws love puzzles too. They
I'm
have
sensing there's a difference in assembly methods here.
very different. So they are so methodical. Like they have a set of baking sheets and they sort the pieces by color so that like you don't
Oh
have
my.
everything spread out on the table.
Okay.
I am like I am the chaos puzzler. So I
Yeah.
dump the whole thing on a table that's really probably too small for that size of puzzle. And I usually try to start with the border, but it's
Okay.
all there. And then halfway through, I have to do all this maneuvering because I need to move the pieces into the middle of the puzzle.
Uh-huh.
But I just enjoy, like, again, bringing that sort of order to chaos and like finding small things to work through. So a lot of times you'll start a puzzle and all the colors look like they're exactly the same. You're like, oh, how am I ever going to pick this red section from this red section?
Okay.
And then the closer and the more you start to work the puzzle and you really get into the nitty gritty, then you really start to see the nuances of the
Mm-hmm.
puzzle. And you're like, oh my gosh, this red is totally different than this red over
Uh-huh.
here. So I enjoy that. I don't know why, but I just
No, I
do.
love that. That makes so much sense. And I see absolutely order out of chaos, how you can apply that in growing a team, scaling a team, growing your sales within a challenging competitive space, and sales being ever changing and the diagnostic space being quickly evolving and changing. You have to be able to bring that, sometimes order out of chaos. So I think that that's a really cool and significant tie there. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So we talked about drivers and staying motivated. I wanted to see if you have some advice for professionals who on their down days when they feel stuck, or when they get some negative feedback, how can they take and turn that into a positive?
Well, I think the first thing is like, know that you're not alone, right? We all have those days where we doubt ourselves, where we just, feel a little bit disconnected. I'm a big believer in having a personal board. So you've got a small group of people that probably come from different backgrounds, different skill sets that sort of sit on your board that you can reach out to when you're
Hmm.
kind of having some of those struggle days, who can kind of help guide you and give you a little bit of perspective. For me, I think that's been really helpful when, you go for a job and it doesn't work out. And, I think just having people that know you, like that really know you,
Hmm.
can offer you some good advice and just help kind of keep you grounded and knowing that, you know, bad day, they're not the end of the world. And
Uh-huh.
it's so true what they say. Like the older you get, the more you sort of recognize this and you kind of sort of stabilize a little bit of
Yeah.
like, okay, is this really going to matter in 4 or 5 years? Like,
Yes.
probably not. So it's like, can I just bring it down and like
Uh-huh.
recognize that I'm feeling crappy about this,
Yeah.
but in 2 or 3 days, it's gone, it's
Hmm.
past, and we're moving on. And I'm forever the optimist too. So it's always like, well, this didn't happen because something better is supposed to happen, right? And like I'm
Yeah.
being redirected to what I'm supposed to be doing.
Ah, I love that. That is so
Mm-hmm.
great. Who's on your board, if you're open to sharing?
So I have,
Not their names, but who they are in your
yeah,
life.
names and addresses and emails. No, I have several former colleagues and
Okay.
former bosses. I
Oh,
have
good.
a close friend from college that's on my
Hmm.
board as well. And my mom and dad are definitely on my board because they really know me.
That's so nice. And these board members that know you, I'm curious, do they also give you direct feedback, even, giving the positive, but also sharing areas that because sometimes it's easier for others to see outside of us to help us, understand areas where we might want to work on things. It's not always the person's role to tell us because sometimes we're not ready to hear. I've learned that on the other end, giving advice that is not ready to be received. But just curious if you're getting some of the areas of improvement, direct feedback from your board members too.
Yes, moms are always great for that, and I
This is true.
adore my mother because it's like, okay, even in high school, I'd go out shopping. The best I would ever look is when she went with me, and she was brutally
Aw,
honest, but man, she would help me pick out a stellar outfit. So she's
amazing.
always there, and to do it in a nice way, but also to be like, well, this kind of comes across like this. So she's
Yeah,
fantastic. Um,
that's great.
and others too. I think they deliver it a little bit different way. But I love what you said too about like we have to be open to that, because
Yeah.
sometimes you call your board and you're like, "Can you believe this?" And and in the moment you really just want someone to validate you and say,
Uh-huh.
"Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous." But I think too, like as leaders, we got to stop and like reflect a little bit and say, "Okay, well, maybe I understand this person, like where this person was coming from, or
Hmm.
maybe I could have done this a little bit better too."
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and this is not always a popular belief, but I think that the best gift or the kindest that we can be to others is honest. I think that that's really important. Of course, there's a way to say it, but there can be a risk in honesty, in giving honest feedback or feelings, because you don't know how the other person is going to take it. So, as a person taking that risk, that's a gift. That's an investment, is how I look at it. So I like to be genuine and honest with others. And I want friends and board members. I'm going to think about building out a board too. That's great. You're giving me some good ideas here too. But I would want my board members to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. They say when you really care about someone, you tell them what they need to hear. And when you don't care, you tell them what they want to hear.
One last piece of or question, advice question for you before I let you go. On leadership style, there's lots of aspiring leaders out there, maybe super strong individual contributing team members that want to go into leadership. And I don't know that um, emerging leaders, think necessarily start to think about their leadership style, but I think it's important. And I'm curious if you have any advice for aspiring leaders on how to learn what their leadership style might be.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one, I'm a big believer in leadership is a very different skill set than, I'm in the sales world, right? So sometimes you can have a really amazing salesperson who's not cut out for leadership.
Hmm.
Or they're cut out for leadership, but they're probably going to hate it because
Right.
of
Okay.
what they like to do. So I
Yeah.
always try to be really honest with people about like what leadership actually looks like. Because sometimes people are just like, well, it's just the next step, right? Like I'm moving up the ladder and that's the next thing for me.
Hmm.
And I would caution people away from that because I think if you really want to get into leadership, your why is super important
Yeah.
because you aren't going to be like, the spotlight's not going to be on you anymore. And if that's really what's driving you, and you think about, okay, what do I like? What motivates me?
Hmm.
I know for me, like the best phone call I can get is for a rep to call me and say, "Oh my gosh, that thing we talked about and I tried this and it worked." Like nothing makes me happier than hearing about their
Absolutely.
success. So
Okay.
I would just like tell people one, like be really honest about like if moving into a leadership role is like actually something you think you would want to do. And then also leadership comes in a lot of different forms. So you don't even have to be in an official leadership
Hmm.
role or people leader
Yeah.
role to be a leader on your team. But to me, it's just about, what are you doing for others? How are you helping the people around you? And if
Hmm.
you enjoy that and that fuels you, then I think you're a great candidate. And I would really sit down and think about, what are the things that bring you the most joy in the job? And that will sort of help develop your style. Like, is it teaching people? Is it demonstrating things? Is it finding new ways to solve problems? Like, what are the things that you really enjoy about your job that sort of set you apart from your peers? And that will kind of help mold the type of leader that you are. And then find your tribe for it, right? Because not
Uh-huh.
every style fits every team. So, sometimes you may be a mismatch for this team, but you'd be
Hmm.
great on a totally different type of team with your style.
I love that. That is great advice. Thank you so much. And I love how you brought it back to the why. I think the having the why behind the what, why we want the goal that we want to achieve is key, because if they don't align, you're not going to succeed and you're not going to enjoy the process, which is probably key and why you wouldn't be
Yeah.
succeeding. And I also love that you shared to find your tribe, because just because you may not be the right leader for one team or organization doesn't mean that your style wouldn't fit elsewhere. Thank you so
Hmm.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoyed it.
Yes, it's been so great to have you. And anybody who wants to get in touch with you, I will leave your LinkedIn in the description and look forward to hearing about your successes. I know you're going to have with building out your new team. So definitely stay in touch. And thank you to our listeners. If you enjoyed this show, please remember to like and subscribe. And also remember, your next step doesn't have to be a big step, it just has to be yours. So just make sure that you keep moving toward the direction that feels meaningful to you, and you'll be headed in the right direction. And we'll see you next time.